So here we are at Anglesey Circuit, and with me, I'm very pleased to announce, is the new circuit manager of Anglesey Trackmon Circuit, Andrew. Please tell the folks at home all about it.
Sid, it's an absolute pleasure to be here at Anglesey, and especially as Thundersports are one of the first race meetings that I'm going to be hosting effectively as the new circuit manager here. As we know one another well from the MSV days at Snetterton and occasionally at Cadwell Park, places like that, with a deep involvement in motorsport as we all have, our paths are bound to cross. So I thought I'd keep it a bit of a surprise for you and David to just jump on it when you arrived and see the look on your faces when you got here, having been at Snetterton when you were there a little bit earlier in the year. But for me to be at Anglesey is great. I've been here a lot in the past, effectively as a customer of the circuit, if you like, because I've done a bit of racing up here long before they actually created the new circuit. I loved the old 1 mile track. It was a brilliant place for people to come to actually begin their motorsport careers, whether it's in cars or on bikes. I certainly used it a lot as a testing and training ground for young drivers when I was running a race team a few years ago, because Richard Peacock, the original founder of the circuit, has got a great enthusiasm for all forms of motorsport, and he was very welcoming to young drivers and subsequently, of course, to young riders. And the original circuit was short enough to keep their attention all the time. But he, Richard that is, saw a future for this circuit. It grew in stature as a national sort of venue, if you like, for club racing, and he could see that there was a future for it. And as a visitor here at the time, and having developed a little circuit of my own, which was a kart circuit down in Surrey, I sort of shared many of the same sort of views that he had on how to develop a circuit, and I watched with great interest, and it was always in the back of my mind that if an opportunity came along somewhere along the line to get involved in Anglesey, well, I would probably jump at it. It took a little longer to get involved than I thought it was going to, but it's an absolute privilege to be here. Anglesey Circuit is such a good challenge. It's got a variety of different layouts. As you know, we can run the international circuit or the coastal circuit. There are a couple of other variations as well, which makes it an excellent training centre for people coming into the sport. We've got a club circuit, which is just about a mile long, which is perfect for people wanting to maybe learn how to ride a bike. We do a bit of bike training actually off circuit here as well. We've got a little company that does bike training. So one of the things that really has struck me about Anglesey, and it came as a bit of a shock really, is just how popular it is with bikers. Now, when I went to do some duty management work at Snetterton originally, I was on the periphery of biking, if you like. I'd done a bit of trials riding in my youth, but bikes weren't my first call. It really was four wheels. But having got involved with the duty management stuff at Snetterton, I actually found myself really captured by bikes. I do a little bit of other work outside of circuit management as well, having run a race team, but I also do a little bit of work on motorsport insurance claims, and that's sort of diverted off into bikes. So I've got a little bit more involved with bikes generally. And my time in Norfolk, my level of interest for bike racing really grew. Car racing is brilliant, I love it to pieces, but it lacks a certain degree of excitement compared with bike racing. And maybe it's something to do with circuit configurations, maybe it's something to do with the size of cars these days, I'm not sure. But whatever, bike racing is spectacular. It's exciting, it's close, you get very close racing, people understand it. I think because they understand the bikes they're looking at in a different way to cars these days. And my enthusiasm for racing bikes has grown and grown and grown. And coming to Anglesey made me realise exactly how something in the tone of motorsport has changed a little bit, and how important bike racing is to the future of motor racing circuits in the country. Of course, we'll never forsake car racing because it's in our DNA, isn't it? If you've been brought up that way, that's the way it is. I love car racing as well, but I can see the importance of bike racing. And when you look at the general profile of North Wales and the level of motorsport interest up here, it probably actually hinges more around bikes than rallying, interestingly enough, than necessarily pure car racing. Big in the northwest car racing, so we get our visitors coming here. But if you wanted run-of-the-mill type of events, bike racing and rallying could well be the way to go. And it's a delight that Anglesey would be featuring that way, because it brings clubs like Thundersports here. And for me, the thought of Thundersports coming to Anglesey is a bit like having BSB. It's just brilliant, because it's a big paddock. And I know the Thundersport paddock from old. I know I can walk around here. I can see people really committed to what they're doing, but I can also see youngsters coming into the sport through the channels that you create, and that's brilliant for the future of the sport. And there's such a good atmosphere in the paddock. You know, I think I've talked to you and Dave about the fact in the past that going to race control at one of your race meetings, and it's relatively calm, it's relatively tranquil, and yet race meetings just run so smoothly. So the fact that I'm here as circuit manager, being able to host this for you is just a perfect combination for me.
To be fair, I've got to say that, you know, I'm delighted, and when Dave arrives here, he will be delighted also. I mean, I know he will. And I think that for us, it will enhance the whole Anglesey experience, which, by the way, we love, because, I mean, apart from anything else, you know, what do people like about it? Well, it's very Phillip Island-esque. And of course, so it's got such beauty. It's got a fantastic configuration. Obviously, as you know, we tend to do the coastal circuit. But, you know, in your hands, I can just see the Anglesey circuit going from good to brilliant.
Well, that's really kind of you to say that, Sid, and I hope I live up to the expectations. I think with any circuit that there are always areas that you can see to improve. I think that historically Anglesey circuit has hopefully always been a very friendly place to come to and very welcoming. I'm delighted that the stalwart members of the staff are still here and are certainly falling into that role of welcoming their guests to the circuit. It's something I've learnt over the years. It's very, very important. The customer is king. Now, that doesn't mean to say that the customer always rides roughshod over the situation to get what they want, because obviously we've got safety in mind, but we've got the future of the circuit in mind, and we have to draw a little bit of a balance there. But welcoming the competitors, welcoming the clubs, understanding the whys and wherefores of exactly what goes through the mind is very important. And I think that possibly one of the areas that we have to share here is that if you've been involved in the sport from grassroots level, you understand what competitors go through. And I think that maybe in some areas that isn't always the case. You go to some circuits and that isn't always quite the case. You know, it's very easy to run a race circuit as an event. And maybe if you don't understand what the competitor's quite going through, you're not quite sure what the apprehensions are and so on and so forth, it's difficult to understand fully what their criteria are. And understanding that is a key thing, I think. And that's where you guys play such an important role. It's not just starting a club and running an event, is it? It's actually being involved in it. You know that when you arrive at the circuit, actually the first thing on your mind is probably where are the toilets and where's the cafe, and then you're thinking about the racing. I've seen in the past, even from karting upwards, people change character as they go through a race meeting. That apprehension when they walk through the door at the very beginning can sometimes put them on the back foot. And as they get more relaxed with the event, as they go through the event, the apprehension begins to go away a little bit. The pure racer element comes out in them, and that character changes. And if you understand that, those little fracas that you see occasionally at the gates of race circuits, if you understand what the competitor's feeling, you can think your way around it. And one of the game plans here is to try and get the crew here to fully understand that, so that we hopefully greet people in a friendly fashion and welcome them in. Yes, like every other circuit, some of the facilities can be improved along the way, and we certainly got ideas in mind to be able to do that. Of course, it's all down to funding, and we've got to think of ways in which we can create that, maybe creatively or otherwise. But it's attention to detail, and that's certainly one of the things that, as a legacy of my involvement with other circuits, particularly the one in Norfolk that we both know so well, the attention to detail that was drummed into me there, I think is something that I can carry forward here as well. So over the forthcoming years, I hope that the competitors and the clubs will see little improvements, and those little improvements will all build up to effectively be big ones in the end.
Well, you mentioned, obviously, one of the things that is close to my heart. I mean, as you probably know, I used to run a team, and I can remember very, very well how hard it was just to get to the circuit, and the stress where you were going to park, and would you have electricity, and how the weekend was going to go, and were you going to take several boxes of scrap home, or an injured rider, or worse. So there's a lot of stress levels here. Which is why I'm delighted, because I know that it's something that you understand. Also, what I also would like to say is that the staff here, Andrew Hughes and Annette and Arthur and Kasky, we know them all so well, and they're all great people. And not wishing to sort of blow your trumpet too much, but they deserve you.
Well, that's a strong thing to say, Sid. I've got to live up to that expectation. Possibly, I hope that I can do that. I hope I can do that, and I hope I can serve them well, because they have put an awful lot into this circuit over the years. Like any circuit, I think it goes through slight ups and downs, as we were talking about before the interview began. A slight history over the last few years. And the crew here have had to dig very deep on the occasions, and they've done it, and they've been stalwart with it, absolutely blinding. And the circuit is still here, and it's still running, and it's still welcoming people. And I think a lot of people who come through the door possibly haven't understood what the background situation has necessarily been all the time, and that's the way it should be. But their perseverance, the crew here, their perseverance deserves recognition, and I'm glad you brought that up. But it deserves recognition in the way that they see this place moving forward, and they realise that the hard work they put in was actually all worthwhile. And that's something that I am very keen. I wouldn't say I was desperate to do, but I probably am actually desperate to make sure that happens, because job satisfaction is what it's all about. And if you're into motorsport, then the satisfaction of winning is brilliant. But that goes down to the people who run the circuits as well. The desperation to win, to make a welcoming venue, to make the racing safe as it can possibly be, to make things like your recovery work and everything else so that you minimise the downtime on the circuit. Heaven forbid, I've got my fingers crossed right now for this weekend, but you know what I mean. And to try and work with the weather conditions, particularly here in Anglesey. We're blessed today with sunshine. Let's hope it stays over the weekend. You know, we all have a mountain to climb to make these things work. And the crew here have worked remorselessly over the last few years to keep a happy ship going as far as customers are concerned. I'm determined that they see the recognition of that in the way we move this circuit forward, improving things where we can, and showing them that it was all worthwhile.
Excellent. Well, I was already looking forward to Anglesey. Despite, for me, it's like a 6.5, 7 hour journey, but now I'm looking forward to it even more. Thank you very much.
You're more than welcome. And that 6.5 hour journey really isn't as bad as you think, Sid, because when you get here, that view is like nothing else on earth except Phillip Island, is it?
Very good. Thanks, Andrew.